Hi, this is Joni Swedlund. Welcome to the Strong Women, Stronger World podcast, where each episode we interview different leaders to help accelerate your leadership learning, challenge you to take risks to advance your own career, and teach you how to lead from inside out. My comments and insights are based on my own experience, which span a 27-year career in global management consulting, including 18 as a partner. This podcast is meant to inspire and empower you to action. It is time to step into your power. The world needs more women leaders. Together, we are strong. Strong women, stronger world. Our topic for today is communicating with confidence and clarity with our special guest, Casey Mank. Casey is the co-founder of Bold Type, a woman-owned communications training firm that helps people write more clearly and effectively at work. She has taught in composition classrooms and university writing centers for over 10 years and currently teaches at Georgetown University School of Nursing and Health Studies and McDonough School of Business. She is a board member at the nonprofit Center for Plain Language, where she serves as head judge for the center's annual Clearmark Awards. She is proud to have helped thousands of writers get to the point and reach their audiences with greater impact. Outside of professional writing, Casey likes to read science fiction and explore DC's lesser-known parks and gardens with her dog, Frankie. Welcome, Casey. Thank you for joining our show.
Hi, Joni. It's great to be here chatting with you today.
Oh, I'm so excited that you are with us, and let's just get right into it. Casey, let's start with your personal journey. What led you to the communications field?
Well, I spent a lot of time as an English major. So in undergrad, English major, in master's program, I was getting a master's in English literature. And for all those years, there's sort of two options. You're going to be a teacher, or maybe if you're super ambitious, you'll go to law school. There's always like a couple people from English that go to law school, and those are the only options. And when I was at Georgetown getting my master's in English, I learned from one of my professors and a mentor of mine that there was this whole field of professional writing and professional communications. And it might sound wild to people who are more immersed in the corporate world. Of course, there's professional communications, but as an English major, you really only think about becoming a teacher. And it's sort of like, will you teach college or will you teach high school? Or will you teach ESL? Or, so just learning that that was even an option was really exciting. And I didn't realize that until I was actually in my master's program.
Well, that's exciting. And clearly, I think in the business world, there is a great need for writing effectively. According to Fast Company magazine, I recently read that job postings cite effective communication as a sought after communication skills 35 times more than the other soft skills. So what are some of the writing tips and hacks that you can share with our listeners to improve our overall communication?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's nice that I never have to reach far to explain to people why they should care about their communication skills. I mean, every job listing in the world says excellent verbal and written communication, right? So I never have to really do too much of a pitch on why it's important for people to have that skill. There's so many different writing hacks I could share. I think I'll pick two, if that's okay, for today. Two of my favorites. One is, I think professional communicators could get a lot further if they didn't try to show off. And what I mean by that is try to sound really smart when they're writing anything professionally. A lot of the bad habits that we teach people to sort of avoid: passive voice, long, confusing sentences, nominalizations, just complex writing that's hard to read. It all comes from this place of, and jargon, of course, too many jargons and buzzwords. These are all things. Yeah, the jargon, I know.
Alphabet soup, right?
Yeah, everybody sort of rolls their eyes at that one. These are all things we teach people to avoid. And they all actually come from a place of people trying to show off and show that they know like the lingo and that they know a lot of big words and they have a good vocabulary. And often those things are all the enemy of kind of clear communication and actually getting your idea across. So I think one of the best things people can do in professional writing and communication is just sort of not try to be fancy sounding, just say what they need to say in more simple, straightforward terms. And then the other one would be bottom line upfront. So if you haven't heard the acronym BLUF, BLUF, BLUF stands for bottom line upfront. A lot of us were taught in school to kind of wind up to our big point. You know, you have your big wide intro and it like funnels down into what you actually want to say. Or if you're reading something for fun, maybe the final takeaway is like far at the end of this journey of like a novel or an op-ed. But in professional communications, people really want to know why you are asking for their time right up front. So you can think of this as the difference between like walking into your boss and saying, hey, so we've been working really hard and a lot of things have happened and someone called today with some surprising news. And, you know, we had all these factors that we couldn't really control and things have been going crazy. And so we can't launch the product today. Or you could walk in and say, I'm about to tell you why we can't launch the product today. And think about which one of those is like more effective. And you can do the same thing in writing. So just put your big takeaway near the top.
Oh, I love that.
Whatever
tip.
you're trying to
Yeah,
say.
absolutely. Just that example, so clear and so much more impactful to be able to start with the bottom line and just be very clear up front, because that's going to draw others in so they can understand the why, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I love that. And for the first tip that you also mentioned, I can't remember which level it is, but for the majority of human beings out there that are reading things, right? Or but the reading level needs to be brought down to a very lower educational level. So I love that, not trying to use the biggest words and to sound smart, but to just get to the gist of it and to make it really understandable for a wider audience.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Most people recommend an 8th to 10th grade reading level for general readers who just want to get through things quickly. So you're not even trying to go all the way to the end of high school there. You're just trying to make it, you know, grade 8 to 10 is kind of the standard.
Okay, that is doable. That sounds doable for all of us. Absolutely. Awesome. Okay, now only because I know you and we've had some conversations in the past, you use an acronym that I think is really fascinating, and I wondered if you would mind just sharing a little bit on what it stands for and how you use this in your everyday communication. It's called ART.
Yep. So ART stands for audience, response, and tone. It's kind of our cornerstone tool for audience awareness, which is the foundation of everything that we teach people about professional communications. Both of the tips that I gave today, you know, not trying to show off and use big words, and then also putting that bottom line up front, they both come from a place of thinking about what the reader needs, not what you kind of want to do as the writer. So the ART, audience response and tone, is our tool for audience awareness. And I have to give credit to the inventor of the ART, my mentor, David Lipscomb. He's the director of the Writing Center at Georgetown University and a longtime, you know, professional communicator and writing teacher. And he invented the ART. And he would always sort of famously say that when he was working on a big corporate communications project as an editor, he would refuse to edit anything until he knew the audience response and tone. Because you can't really, you know, get in your vehicle and go where you're going until you know what that destination or goal is. So that's how we use the ART. We have people define, who is this for? What exactly is it trying to make happen out there in the real world? And then what's the tone that's going to bring your audience to that end result? So that's the ART in a nutshell.
That's awesome. I love the fact that you really start with your audience in mind, because I think sometimes we get in our heads and we don't all we you know we get a little stuck, right? And but keeping your audience in mind first and foremost, that's really going to help us to think about how we want to communicate. And then the response, really thinking about what is it that you're going to want out of your audience. I think that that's a great way to start thinking and structuring how you do it. And then talk a little bit more about tone. How does tone play into all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of really interesting research on how tone impacts the way that people react to material. A great starting point, if that's something you want to dig into on your own and research is Nielsen Norman Group. They have some really good articles on the impact of tone on readers' perception of what's happening in a document. But basically, we like to think of it as, writing is very social. It's kind of a conversation, but just a slow, stretched out conversation. So your writing is speaking to someone and eliciting maybe trust, maybe impatience, it's always eliciting sort of emotions and reactions. So thinking about if your piece of content were a person having a conversation with your reader, what would be some adjectives you would use? And we do this in every one of our workshops. We have people define their audience response and tone. We get to tone. We say list maybe 4 adjectives for the tone you want to go for. And everyone says, well, I want it to be informative and then they're stuck and they can't think of tone words. But there's actually like hundreds of tone words you could choose from. You can be playful, serious, professional, matter of fact, authoritative, conspiratorial is one that I like, hey, you're in on this information with me. There's so many. So getting really creative and even just looking up like tone adjectives can really help you. And then later when you're editing what you've written, that's what helps you make decisions on word choice, sentence style, all those little editing decisions. You just look back at the tone you're shooting for and think, are these fitting with my goal there?
Okay. So as you mentioned editing, so let's just think about like the emails that we even have to send out there. So as we're writing this and then we need to go back and do the edits, how much time would you recommend that we actually are putting into the editing? Are we doing that today? Are we just like so busy we just want to hit the send? What's happening there?
So we like to ask people to spend a little time thinking about how much time they spend thinking versus drafting versus editing and adjust those ratios a little bit. So take email as a great example. We teach a lot of email classes. Obviously, it's the writing task that we all share, every one of us every day. So a lot of people spend more time writing and less time editing, but we actually encourage people to just sort of write quickly and not edit while they write, because all the research shows you can't effectively do those two things at the same time. Like you might think you're doing it all at once, but you're not really. So just write and get it out there. Then spend more time editing, like trimming, rearranging. And that's the stuff that we really teach people how to do. But yes, people should edit more before they hit send. That's just absolutely. I think if you can it's not even so much for typos and things like that, spelling mistakes, because often I think most of our different email service providers will like catch those things for us, or we have Grammarly plugin. That's the easy part, typos. But what you can actually do as a human being is go through and look for extra fluff that you can snip out to make it easier for your reader to get the message quickly and not have to wade through like you're thinking out loud on the page in your email, to kind of make it, shorter and more concise for your end reader. But also, yes, get Grammarly plugin if you don't already have it.
Yes. So, okay. I think that is a great tip. I use Grammarly daily, and it really saves me in so many ways while I'm writing. Talk a minute about technology and what's available. Is there any other tools? And if our listeners are not familiar with Grammarly, this is actually a free tool that you can use, and it is amazing. Not only does it catch your typos, but it also performs some other nice suggestions and where you may have grammatical errors or things like that. So talk to us a little bit about the tools that you use or that you may include in your training.
Yeah. There's so many great things to help people nowadays. So Grammarly is obviously one. And like you said, it does simple typos and mistakes, but it also does some suggestions around conciseness and tone. It'll send you a little report every week about the tones that are most often found in your writing. So that's another way to kind of learn about those tone words if you struggle to think of them. The analytics in a Word document are surprisingly good. It'll tell you the percentage of passive voice sentences that you have. It'll give you a grade level for the writing that you're doing and a reading ease score. And where to find these things in a Word document is after you've done the entire spelling spelling and grammar check. So you hit review in a Word document. It goes through the whole thing and it suggests all the changes. You can hit ignore on everyone, or you can actually look at them. But once you reach the end of that report, it'll pop up a little box and it'll tell you a lot of really interesting metrics on your writing. So if you're a Word user, or if you want to just like take things from other programs, like I always recommend people take things from their slide decks, put it in a Google Doc with Grammarly running, or put it in a Word doc, because PowerPoint itself will not help you with a lot of things. And if you've had the experience of having a typo on a PowerPoint in front of a room full of people, as I have, you'll know that that's really uncomfortable. So taking that text and putting it in some of those. There's also a lot of great testing softwares on the internet. If you just Google like grade level reading tester or something like that, a bunch will pop up and you can just plug in text. It'll give you the grade level you're writing at, and some of them will give you other scores as well. There's a tool that I really like called the Difficult and Extraneous Word Finder, and it'll tell you, I know it's kind of a mouthful for something that's helping you be simpler, but yeah, it's the Difficult and Extraneous Word Finder. If you paste text in, it'll basically tell you whether you have any words that are rare, and they have this whole calculation for a rare score on words, whether they're within the set of about 10,000 to 12,000 words that most adults know and use often, or if they're words that most adults don't see very often. So they would have to kind of like stop for a minute and think about, what does this word mean again? And those are the kind of words that bog down your writing and stuff. So those are some of the ones that I like.
Oh, those are some fantastic tips for sure. One other question I had around emails, just given the volume of emails that professionals receive on a daily basis. I mean, that in itself could be almost a full-time job, just managing your inbox sometimes. How do you craft emails that will actually be read?
This is such a good question. I mean, so email hacks are one of my favorite things. Like I said, email workshops are one of the things we teach the most often. I think one good way to think about this, and it's sort of harsh and it's sort of sobering, but one good way to think about this is if you're thinking about emails that actually get opened and read, really the only part that matters there is the subject line and the preview text and the sender name. So to get someone into your email, the content of the email can't help you at all. So it's important to write good emails, and we teach people that, for hours every week. But even if you just think hard about what you're actually doing in the inbox with your subject line, your preview text, and making sure that that's something that is tailored to the audience response and tone that you're trying to reach, or whatever tool you like. It doesn't have to be ours, but just thinking, why am I writing this? What's going to grab the attention of my particular audience? I think deadlines are effective for that, letting people know if there's any sort of urgency or an action step for them to do. Like, hey, I need you to do something by this Thursday. Get that right into the subject line. Don't save it for the third paragraph of the email that they might never open. It's so easy to delete an email, and it's so satisfying. Like, I know when I go through my inbox every morning, just before I can even start my workday, I have to get rid of all the like Ann Taylor promotional emails that will never stop coming to me. And so like, it's really easy to get kind of like taken out with the trash in that sense, if you're not being clear about why you're in somebody's inbox right up front.
I think that is such a great tip, because sometimes the subject line may, be an afterthought for us, or, we don't really put as much thought and care into that. But it sounds like that should be where we start really with our audience, and the tone and response we're seeking is really get crisp and something that's going to catch the reader's attention. And I also love what you talked about with the preview text, because you can't see all the content. So it sounds like, again, maybe your that bluff might come into play here, right? The bottom line, get that up front so it's in the preview text. So I think that's a really good suggestion for our listeners. Okay, so we mentioned in your bio about plain language. Can you talk a little bit about what that is? What does that mean?
Yeah, I would love to. And I could talk a lot about plain language, but I'll try to keep it brief. So plain language is a big movement that you may never have heard of. I'm a board member at the Center for Plain Language, which is a nonprofit that helps the government and also other organizations to communicate clearly with their stakeholders. And we try to help not only government agencies, but other organizations sort of enforce this law that you may never have heard of called the Plain Writing Act of 2010, which is a real law. And it requires that all federal agencies, cabinet level agencies, communicate super clearly to their public stakeholders. So like their citizens who are going to the Department of Transportation or the Department of Agriculture and looking for the answer to a specific problem that they have. And we do something every year called the Federal Report Card at the Center for Plain Language, where we score all of the cabinet level agencies on their use of plain language. And if you've ever sort of interacted with a government website, you might be thinking like, there's a lot of people breaking the law out there. And, they have really complex topics to convey. And so we help them do that. But we also work with lots of private companies too, nonprofits, lots of healthcare companies. And what plain language is all about, it has a 3-step process that I love. It's very plain language. We make sure that organizations are helping their end users find what they need, understand what they find, and then use what they find to meet their needs. So like everything I've already said, it's all about that end user and what they're looking for. And plain language, what kind of pops into most people's heads, and this is true, it's about easier word choices, shorter, clearer sentences, that kind of stuff. But that's only half of it. The other half of plain language is actually information design. So how you're laying things out on a page or an app or an infographic so that they grab the eye really quickly and people instantly understand sort of the hierarchy of information. So it's both those things.
Well, this makes so much common sense. You would think that everyone would want to adopt the plain language. And I know I personally have seen this in the financial services industry, particularly with any of the disclosures or information as let's say someone who wants to go to a bank and open up an account or whatever it may be. Now it's very clear. I think the language has become much more of the plain language that you're describing, so that the consumers start to really understand what it is that they are either getting themselves into, and understand what does that mean and what are the terms. And so all of that has been laid out much more clearly. So I think that this might be a great takeaway for anyone who might be developing a website or any of those types of things. Just the more clear you can be, I think that helps the individuals who may be reading that material.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, there's been a huge push for more plain legal language. So when people are signing things, they actually understand what they are signing. And that's a huge part of not so much what I do, because I'm not a legal expert, but there's a huge plain language community of lawyers who really work on that. And it becomes, a civil rights issue and an accessibility issue and all of that stuff. And then there's also, a great opportunity for just like regular business people, service providers, people writing an About Us page. If you've ever read an About Us page and then you're like, I still don't know what you do, like what does your company do? I think those are also great opportunities for plain language. So there's a really serious side, and there's also just like, we can all use it as well.
I think this is such great advice for everybody. Well, Casey, I know that you are especially interested in working with professional women. What specifically do you work on with women when it comes to professional communicating?
Yeah, absolutely. So women have a number of habits, and this might not be a big surprise to everyone, that undermine their message in communication. And this happens verbally, and these are the ones we're maybe more familiar with. So saying sorry too often, just over apologizing for things, using hedging words like maybe, might be, possibly, just a little bit, those minimizing words like, hey, I just have a quick, tiny question. It's so quick, it's so tiny, all those verbal tics, things like that, saying sorry, inflation words, which are sort of the opposite of like a minimizing word. So things like really, very, super, using those too much can actually slightly diminish the credibility of what you're saying. And I think we're all pretty familiar with those verbally, but they all happen in writing too. And of course, since we're, focused on the written communication side of things, we help people find those things in their written communications. And I think you'd be amazed how many really high level professional women I've worked with who still write that way. Like they're writing to their own direct reports that they manage, and they're saying like, so sorry, could I just get a little bit, and it's like, those are their team, the people they manage, and they're still using those habits. And once you point them out, they're like, wow, I really don't need those words in my email, So
I think those are great suggestions for all of us to start looking at and just to be aware, creating that awareness. Because obviously we want to stop apologizing, period. There's no reason. I mean, you have purpose and it's a good thing that you're sending out and communicating with others. So, and I love this tip on diminishing your credibility using those words that might be overinflating. That's something that we may not be aware of. And so I think these are good things that we can all start really digging into and looking at. Okay, so I also want to just pick your brain for a moment because I love the fact that you are a woman entrepreneur and you decided to venture out kind of on this unique path as you talked about earlier. So, would you mind sharing with us what inspired you to start your own business?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, when I was in grad school, I learned that professional communications and being a communications consultant was a thing. I started doing some of that while I was in school. And then afterwards, I was working for a couple of other firms, owned by other people, teaching classes and executive coaching people on this and helping people with their writing. And I think at that time, so I started doing the work I'm doing now. And I had a friend who's my co-founder now, who was also doing this work in consulting and just writing for a bunch of different people and teaching workshops. And we both would always talk and say like, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we had our own company that did this someday, like 10 years from now, when we're like really, established and we're really experts, like so far in the future. I can't emphasize how far, we thought like one day it would be so cool. And since my name's Casey and her name is Grace, we used to call it like GNC Inc. between ourselves and just say like, oh, haha, like one day. But then my mentor who I was working for really pushed me out of the nest early. And he was like, I'm not going to do this work anymore. So you should take our clients and anybody who reaches out to me, I'm going to send them to you. And he was like, it's time for you to do your own thing. And I didn't feel like if you had asked me, like, are you ready to start a business and be your own boss? I definitely would have said no. So I told my co-founder, like, hey, it's happening. It's happening 10 years early. And we started our company. And I'm so happy that happened like too soon because I can't imagine how long I would have waited to think I was enough of an expert to do this on my own if it had been up to me. But yeah, I just got completely pushed out of the nest of, working for my mentor at his company. And he was like, it's time for you to take our clients and go on your own. And that's how we started. And I'm really glad that happened. So I think my big advice there would be like, start before you're ready type of thing.
Yes, go before you know. I think that is awesome. And do you have any regrets at all in doing that?
No. I mean,
Yes.
now looking back, I wish I had, tried and failed even more things within the business in the last 2.5 years. Like, I wish I had just been even more like, breaking some eggs to make an omelet, just trying things and seeing what would happen. I'm definitely more cautious by nature. So again, it's good that I had that push to start, and no, definitely don't regret that it happened so early.
I love this. I just think that this is being able to take your competency and go out on your own and try something new and just going without knowing. That's exciting. And I'm wondering for our listeners, are there any big lessons? What are some of the lessons that you've learned thus far in starting your own business?
Yeah, there's so many things that I've learned from Google and also trial and error just along the way. I didn't like know anything about this before I started. Like I already said, definitely do things before you think you're ready. I think this is especially women have a tendency to wait until they know that they're like perfect at something 10 out of 10 before they'll even try it in any kind of public way, which is not how you get results or learn things, So I think just trying before you're ready. Definitely, I've learned the most and made the most progress from doing things rather than thinking about things. So when we started our business, all the things that we thought we should be doing or like what we thought our business would look like, those have all completely shifted based on actual feedback from actual clients and like doing the actual work rather than just sitting and thinking like, if we had a business, like here's what it might look like. And, here's the things like we might need to offer. Like we didn't know what workshops people would want until we started working with clients. So I think just kind of getting in and trying things rather than thinking about them forever I'm still trying to force myself into that every single day, but it always works for the best. One thing that I think is great for people to know is like mentors, especially women mentors in business. For me, this has been the case. They will get on the phone with you. Like if you reach out to a woman who you admire or someone that you meet, like they're so willing to talk to you and just share their experiences. And like I was blown away by the generosity of so many mentors at the beginning who just like got on the phone with me and just chatted. And like, I didn't even know what I needed to know. Like I didn't even know what to ask them, but they just like shared their experiences with me. And so yeah, people are really willing to help you if you say, I'm trying to do something, can I just talk to you? So many people are willing to help you. And then in that vein, also don't be short-sighted in your networking. We've had some really like random and long-term connections like turn into strange sources of referrals for clients for us that, if you had asked us 2.5 years ago at the start, like, oh, who do you need to meet at a networking event? I think we would have said, someone who works in training and development at a big corporation who can hire us. But that, we've met so many other people. One of our most important sources now of referrals came from someone in our neighborhood where my business partner and I both used to live, who had a beautiful home in our neighborhood, and her English basement apartment, she Airbnb'd it. And my business partner's parents would always stay there when they were in town. And that person who had the Airbnb where her parents would stay when they visited connected us to someone who became one of our most important sources of referrals, which is actually roundabout, how I met you, Joni, through the person that we both mutually know. And so, that person wasn't like some big VP of training and development that I was like, you're the one, so just like meet everyone and talk to everyone about your business. And don't be short-sighted with meeting people.
I love this so much. So it sounds like just get out there, do the work, start working with clients, and you're going to figure out what the clients want, and then you adjust. And then secondly, I love the fact you're reaching out to other women entrepreneurs. And I love women supporting women. Yes, we need to do much more of this and take advantage of that. We are stronger together. And I think you are a great example of that. And and then finally, the importance of networking. And I love your story because we just can't judge a book by its cover, really having conversations with other human beings, and they could be people in your neighborhood. It could be anyone, but just having those conversations and networking, because you never know, but being able to communicate what you do and what you have to offer. And you just don't know where that's going to lead you. Well, I am so excited for you, Casey, and for Bold Type and what the promise that holds in helping so many professionals with their professional communication. So congratulations on all your success there. Okay, so I ask every guest this question that comes on the show. So, Casey, what makes you feel strong?
All right. So I thought hard about this one. I think it's a wonderful question that everyone should think about for themselves. Like it really got me thinking. So I decided to go with traveling alone, solo travel. So if you're traveling with friends or family or a partner, it's so easy to just kind of say like, you figure it out, or like, what should we do next? But when you're traveling alone and, you're in a foreign country and the last bus has already left and you're stuck somewhere, you really have to like figure it out. So whether it's like, a long road trip on my own where I like figure out the GPS and I like find a way to like get the car fixed, or traveling by myself, which obviously, not doing so much international travel these days during the pandemic. But I think traveling alone and just figuring stuff out really makes me feel strong.
Yes, that there is so much power in that. And that is, I think, an excellent example of where we can even just feel it in our body, but being able to know that we have everything we need already inside of us, no matter where we are in the world. Awesome. Casey, I am so delighted that you have been a guest on this show. So let our listeners know, where can they contact you and get more information and hire you for their workshops and all of their written and verbal communication needs?
Yeah, I think the best way to stay in touch with us is to get on our email list, because we always email when we have any kind of like free workshop that we often do, free workshop coming up, or if we're doing like a community ticketed workshop with an organizational partner. So if you go to our website, which is www.boldtype.us, we're a .us, there's a pop-up that'll immediately ask you if you want to be on our mailing list. And that's the best place to kind of find out if we have stuff coming up. There's also a contact form there. And I always tell people they're welcome to email me with writing questions, but people rarely take me up on it. But my email is Casey, CASEY, @boldtype.us. And another thing I love to get from people is examples of terrible writing from the internet. So if you come across, I always ask, if you come across something really bad, we need these for our workshops. We need them for before and afters, and they're just fun. So if you see something like awful, please send it to me. I would love to see it.
What a fun challenge for our listeners. I love that so much. And thank you for your kind offer for also letting them get in touch with their personal questions about their own professional communication. So thank you again for being on the show. It was such a pleasure hosting you. And thank you to all of our listeners. And we will look forward to hearing everybody on our next episode.
Thanks, Joni. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you are interested in supporting this content, please hit the subscribe button. This will help to bring much needed funding to bring quality programming to our listeners like you. Your support is greatly appreciated. We encourage you to leave comments. If you have suggestions for leadership topics, please provide those in the comments and we will strive to address those in upcoming episodes. It is time to step into your power. The world needs your leadership. Together we are strong. Strong women, stronger world.